Well, you made it to chapter 18. Congratulations. You're actually halfway through BBG now, so that's a good thing. In this chapter, we're going to be learning the present passive indicative. But we're also going to be learning that whereas English has two voices, the active and the passive, Greek actually has three voices, the active and the middle and the passive. So technically speaking, in this chapter, we're learning the present middle passive indicative. We're also going to be learning something called a deponent verb, and we don't have deponent verbs in English, so this will be something that's new for us in Greek, but that's okay. This is not that difficult of a chapter, but it can be a tad frustrating for some people. In English, if you're a native English speaker, you just know how to make a verb be passive. But if you had to, for example, fill out a chart of how we do that, it can get a little complicated. And so we need to spend a little bit of time on our English grammar just to make sure it's really clear, okay? So English grammar, voice. An active verb in English is a verbal construction where the subject is doing the action of the verb. So we say, I hit the ball. Hit is active, okay? A passive verbal construction is where the subject receives the action of the verb. So I would say in the present tense, I am hit by the ball, or I was hit by the ball, okay? So passive, the subject receives the action of the verb. And you'll notice that in order to form a passive in English, we add helping verbs. So in the present tense, it's I am hit. And in the past tense, it's I was hit. I guess in the future it would be I will be hit. But we use helping verbs to form the passive voice, okay? Take a look at this chart and just make sure that this is really clear in how we form these different nuanced forms of the present tense, okay? All the verbal constructions here are present. The left column is continuous aspect. The right column is an undefined aspect. So if you wanted to make a present active continuous, you would say I am hitting, or in the plural, they are hitting. If you wanted to make it undefined, you would say I hit or they hit. If you wanted to make it a present passive, and this is where it may get a little tricky, if it's continuous, you would say I am being hit, or in the plural, they are being hit. And in the undefined, you would say I am hit or they are hit. Now, when you're using helping verbs in a verbal construction, recognize that it's the time of the helping verb that determines the time of the entire construction. All right, now think about it. If you say they are being hit, what makes that present tense? Well, it's the are, isn't it? So in a verbal construction with helping verbs, it's the time of the helping verb that determines the time of the overall construction. All right? Okay, good. Well, let's move on to the master verb chart. How do you form the present passive indicative? Well, you start with the present tense stem. You add a connecting vowel, the same connecting vowel we had in the active, and then you add primary passive personal endings. Now in English, as I just said, in order to form the passive, we use a helping verb. Greek just has a totally different set of endings. So for the present passive indicative, we're going to have to learn 6 more personal endings, okay? So you have the present tense stem lu, connecting vowel omicron, and one of the primary passive personal endings is my, and so you end up with luomai. If you look at the entire paradigm then, you get luomai, lue, luitai, luamatha, luestha, luantai. And you can see the endings there with the connecting vowel are in color. Luomai means I am being loosed, or I am loosed. Lue, you are being loosed, or you are loosed. Then it's the same connecting vowels that we're used to. And then here are the pure primary passive personal endings. They are mai, sai, tai, mitha, intai. Now, when you compare that over to the paradigm to the left, you can see that except for the second person singular, they all came straight over, didn't they? Without being altered. You can see the mai, tai, mitha, intai in the full paradigm, can't you? The only thing that's a little tricky is the second person singular. And if you want to know, what happened is that sigma between the epsilon and the alpha is intervocalic. It drops out. The epsilon and alpha contract. They go to an eta. And because that's a long vowel, the iota subscript's underneath it. So that's actually what's going on. But what I want you to memorize is the my, psi, tai, mitha, stha, ntai, and then with the connecting vowel, omai, a, atai, amatha, estha, antai. And then if you want to memorize them with the verb, it's luamai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luestha, luantai. Okay, let's flip over to the Master Personal Lending chart. There are 4 quadrants. Several chapters ago, we learned the primary active. What we're doing in this chapter is learning the primary passive personal lendings. So we're going to be learning another 6, as I just said. We know 12 now total. We're halfway through this chart. It's not that hard, is it? Okay. What are those primary passive personal lendings? They are my, psi, tai, mitha, stha, ntai, with the connecting vowel, amai, a, atai, amatha, estha, antai, with luo, luamai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luestha, luantai. Sometimes when I'm saying these endings, I feel a bit like a cheerleader. But you gotta say these endings over and over and over again. Say them out loud. Make sure you don't just say them quietly to yourself. And if you're embarrassed in talking to yourself, then by all means go into your bedroom and shut the door. But you gotta practice these things over and over and over again. So with the primary active and the primary passive, you should be saying, what are the true endings? Nothing, sigma, iota, menta, nsi, mai, psi, tai, mitha, stha, ntai, okay? With the connecting vowel, o, ace, a, amen, eta, usi, omai, a, atai, amatha, estha, antai, with luo, say it with me, luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueta, luusi, luomai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luesa, luantai, okay. Like I say, if you need to lock yourself away for a while and do it, that's fine. But you just need to be doing this over and over and over until these endings are just second nature to you. They're just second nature. You see them and you know what they are, okay? All right. Well, that's it for the primary passive endings. Let's move on to the deponent verb business. And let's use the word erchomai. We'll use that as our example. It's a word that you're going to learn in this chapter, and it means I come or I go. Erchomai. Now, what's different about that form? That's the lexical form. What's different about it? It ends in omai, doesn't it? It doesn't end in omega like luo or akuo. It ends in omai. Okay. Erchomai is a deponent verb. So let me talk about it. In the present tense in Greek, you can have both a middle voice and a passive voice. And again, I know you don't know yet what middle is. We're coming to that in just a second. But in the present tense, middle and passive forms are identical. In other words, you would look at erchomai and you can't tell whether it's a middle or a passive. But that's okay. It doesn't matter now, okay? But I needed to say that before I could get to the definition of what a deponent verb is. A deponent verb is a verb that is middle or passive in form, but active in meaning, okay? A deponent verb is a verb that is middle or passive in form. In the present tense, those two are identical, middle or passive in form, but it's active in meaning. And these are words that, in a sense, forgot their active form, but they're never passive in meaning, okay? That's another way to say it. So middle or passive in form, always active in their meaning. It's always interesting to watch classes over the years and to watch different Greek students, because you can have a student that goes along and understands everything, and then in this chapter gets hung up on something and no one else gets hung up on it. But there's something about this that you can't get past it. Have you hit that point yet? I mean, almost everyone has that kind of experience. Deponent verbs were that way for me, and I think I was just making them much too difficult. They were in earlier chapters when other people were getting stuck. I was understanding it, but then we got to deponents. Most of the class figured them out, and I couldn't figure them out. I just had this mental block. And I can still remember in second year Greek, I was on the way to Hebrew class. I was driving with my Hebrew teacher. I was in second year Greek at the time. And I said, Dr. Madrick, can you tell me what a deponent verb is in Greek? And Dr. Madrick said, well, they're verbs that are middle or passive in form, but active in meaning. And it was like the light went on. It was like, that's so simple. And he goes, yeah. They were very simple. I just was making it hard. But anyway, I just say that as an encouragement to you more than anything else, that if some of these things you have trouble with and other people in the class don't have trouble with, it's okay. They'll get theirs in due time, okay? Anyway, enough anecdotes. Deponent verbs are verbs that are middle or passive in their form, but they're always active in meaning. So the question then becomes, well, how will I know if a verb is deponent? And the answer to that, it's really simple. Look at the lexical form. If the lexical form ends in omai, the verb's deponent. Okay? It's that simple. Don't make it hard. It's that simple. So you're going to learn erkomai in this chapter. You know it's deponent because the lexical form ends in omai. All right. You're also going to be learning a verb, sunago. Is sunago deponent? Well, no. Its lexical form doesn't end in omai. The lexical form ends in omega. So it's a regular verb. Erkomai is deponent because the lexical form ends in omai. So that's pretty straightforward. When it comes to parsing deponent forms, though, there's one little extra thing you have to do. Let's say you came across the form erketai. Okay? Tai is the third person singular, personal ending. So you look at erketai and you go, well, that's a third person singular, present. And before you can say what the voice is, you have to stop and you have to, in essence, go down to the end and say, well, what's the lexical form? Is this word deponent or not? Oh, it's from erkomai. Yeah, it is deponent. Okay, so erketai is a third-person singular, present, deponent, indicative. So don't say active or passive, say deponent. Third-person singular, present, deponent, indicative from erkomai, meaning he, she, it comes. Okay, so that's it for deponent verbs. Okay, you've been in anticipation long enough when it comes to middle. So let me cover what the middle is. And let's start with the form of middle. How do you form a present middle indicative? Well, you start with the present tense stem. You add a connecting vowel. And then since the middle in the present is identical to the passive, you're going to add primary passive personal endings. It's the same thing. So you have the present tense stem, erk, connecting vowel, primary passive personal endings, and you get erkomai. You go to the full paradigm and you have erkomai, erke, erketai, erkamatha, erkestha, erkantai. Okay, the same thing we saw was passives, except the one thing that's different here is what? The definitions are all active. Why? Because erkomai is a deponent verb. That means it's middle or passive in form, but active in meaning. So erkomai means I come. Now try to say that as a passive. I guess you could say I am come, but that's not passive, is it? See, these words generally, deponent verbs, simply don't make any sense in the passive. That's a clue also that it's deponent. Erkomai is a deponent, and therefore it has an active meaning. It means I come. Erke, you come. Erketai, he, she, it comes. So that's the present middle indicative in terms of form. Okay, what about their meaning? I need you to trust me on this, okay? There is a specific nuance connected with the middle voice, but it's a nuance and it's a little advanced. And what I found over the years is that if I tell you now what's going on in middles, it's too much. And so I've pushed off middles, true middles, to a later chapter. And I've organized the vocabulary in such a way that in this chapter and for several chapters to come, all the middles you're going to see are deponent. Now, for example, erkomai happens to be a middle deponent, but the point is, it's a deponent. So all the middles that you're going to see in this chapter and for several chapters to come are deponent. In other words, they're going to have active meanings. And this isn't too unnatural of a thing to do because the fact of the matter is about 75% of the middles in the New Testament are deponent. So the vast majority of middle constructions are deponent in their meaning. So they're all going to be active in translation. And so I just pushed off the nuance of the middle to a later chapter. So for this chapter, if you see a form that's middle, it's going to be a deponent. So give it an active meaning, okay? And for those of you that are really liking to know all the little details of things, at this point, if you're wondering, there's no way for you to tell the difference between a middle deponent and a passive deponent. You can look at erkomai. You're not going to know whether it's middle deponent or passive deponent. But that's okay. You don't need to know. It happens to be a middle deponent, but You won't know it from looking at the form. So that's it for middles, okay? All right. One last major thing, and that is contract verbs. And again, take a look at the paradigm for contract verbs. And what you want to do is ask yourself, if I saw these forms, would I be able to parse it, okay? And you go through there, and it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? The my, the tie, the mythos, the intai is very visible. The only thing that's going to give you a little bit of trouble, perhaps, is second person singular with agapa, with the iota subscript, poie with the iota subscript. Play Roy is really weird, isn't it? I mean, it looks like it's a nominative plural, masculine, second declension noun. It's not. Now, the nice thing here is that pleirao never occurs in the New Testament in the second person singular. So unless your teacher is really pushing you on the paradigms, you're never actually going to see that form, so no big deal. But anyway, other than second person singular forms, contracts are very easily visible when you see them in the sentences. Okay, so that wasn't really hard, was it? Okay, a couple of new things, and you got to think through your English grammar, but for the most part, I think you probably did fine. Okay, so in summary, let's look and see what we learned in this chapter. Well, we saw that in a passive verbal construction, the subject is receiving the action of the verb, and in English, we form passive construction by adding in a helping verb, but in Greek, we have a totally different set of endings to indicate passive constructions. We also learned deponent verbs, and these are verbs that are middle or passive in their form, but always active in their meaning. And we can tell if a verb is deponent or not by looking at its lexical form. If the lexical form ends in omai, then it's a deponent verb. In terms of the form, in the present tense, middle and passive are identical, so there's nothing new there, at least in terms of the middle. In terms of meaning, all of the middles that you're going to see in this chapter and for several chapters to come are deponent. So all the middles are going to end up having an active meaning. We learned the primary passive personal endings. They are my, sai, tai, mythos, the ntai. There's that cheerleader again. Omai, eatai, amatha, esta, antai. And then with luo, luomai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luesta, luantai. And in the master verb chart, we added one more line, didn't we? How do you form the present middle passive? Well, you form it with the present tense stem, a connecting vowel, and primary middle passive personal endings, and you get something like luomai. Okay, there you are through chapter 18. But before you get to the vocabulary, I need to tell you about one more hurdle you just jumped. Once you've learned all the vocabulary in this chapter, look at the statistics at the end. You now know just a tad over 70% of all word occurrences, okay? That means when you're done with the vocabulary in this chapter, you flip open your Greek Bible, you should recognize 7 out of every 10 of those words. So congratulations, that's really encouraging, I think. Now, the last milestone is going to be 80%, and we don't hit that till the last chapter of the book. But the amount of vocabulary you'll be learning is also dropping off a bit. But anyway, so you now know at the end of this chapter, just a tad over 70%. So congratulations. Okay, now let's learn the vocabulary in this chapter. Apokrinomai. I answer. Day. It is necessary. Dunamai. I am able and powerful. Erchomai. I come, go. Nux, nuktas, hey. Night. Hostis, hatis, hati. Whoever, whichever, whatever. Poruomai. I go, proceed, live. Sunago. I gather together, invite. Tapas, tapu, ha. Place, location. Hos. As, like, when, that, how, about.